Hello, welcome to the Dart and Flutter course. Today, we will talk about two very important and frequently used widgets in Flutter, column and row. These widgets are used to arrange elements on the screen. With column and row, you can align your elements vertically and horizontally, respectively. Let's start with the column widget. This widget helps you arrange elements vertically, one after another, from top to bottom. Imagine it like a stack of books on a table. First one book, then another on top, then a third, and so on. The main property of this widget is children. It accepts a list of widgets. Let's pass in a few text elements and some containers with different sizes and colors. This way, the elements will be stacked one after another from top to bottom. Now, let's talk about additional settings. The column widget has several properties that help control how your elements are placed. For example, main axis alignment. This property is of type main axis alignment, which is an enum with the following options. It controls the placement of elements along the main axis. In the case of column, the main axis is vertical. For example, if you want your elements to be vertically centered, you can pass the center value from the enum. This will center your elements along the main axis. This enum also has the end value, which means that your elements will be aligned at the bottom. Here's how it looks. The next value is space between. It ensures that there is equal spacing between your elements. However, there will be no spacing between the outermost elements and the edges. Here's how it looks. Next, let's move on to space around. It's almost the same as space between, but now we have spacing between the outermost elements and the edges. However, this spacing is half of the spacing between the inner elements. You can see the example on your screen. We also have space evenly. It's similar to space around, but it has equal spacing between all elements and between the edges and the outermost elements. Here's how it looks. Now, let's move on to the next parameter of column, cross-axis alignment. This property is of type cross-axis alignment, which is also an enum. It controls how the elements align along the cross-axis, which is horizontal in the case of column. For example, if you want the elements to align to the left, you can pass the start value from the enum. If, on the contrary, you want the elements to align to the right, you should use the end value. Note that only the text alignment changes because our containers take up the full width by default. Now, let's move on to the row widget. Row is the same as column but the opposite. Instead of arranging elements from top to bottom, row arranges them from left to right. Row has the same parameters, but main axis alignment and cross-axis alignment work in the opposite way. Let's replace our column with row. However, for this, we need to change the parameters of our containers. When the containers are in a column, they take up the full width, but when they are in a row, they take up the full height. Therefore, when we use them in column, we explicitly set the height. But in row, we need to specify the width instead of the height. After restarting the code, we see that the elements are now arranged differently. Notice that our text is at the bottom because the cross-axis alignment parameter, which is responsible for cross-axis alignment, in the case of row, the vertical axis, is set to end. Let's center it. To do this, set cross-axis alignment to center. Now, let's talk about how we can combine column and row. For example, you can place a row inside a column or a column inside a row. This gives you more flexibility in creating complex interfaces. For example, let's create a column that centers elements along the main axis. The first element will be a row, which will also center its elements. In our row, we will have two containers. Notice that here we explicitly specify both width and height, because in some situations, Flutter may not automatically determine the height of a row, especially if it is inside a column. To avoid this issue, you need to specify the height manually. With experience, you'll learn when this will be necessary. But we could also wrap our row in a container and specify the height there. Then, we wouldn't need to specify the height for each container inside the row, as it would be equal to the height we set for the parent container. Next, the second element of our column will be a container with explicitly specified dimensions. Let's run the code. We see how easily we can combine column and row to create convenient and understandable interfaces. Don't worry if everything isn't clear right away. Programming is a process, and with practice, it gets easier. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with friends. See you in the next lesson.